All right, 3, 2, 1, let's go. Hey guys, it's Todd with Project 9. Welcome to Personal Development Hacks, where we help you guys get off of autopilot, start doing what truly inspires you, and live your best life. So, got another great episode today. We have a special guest again. This is Kerry Tushoff. How are you, Kerry?
Hey, I'm fine. I'm just great. And I'm so happy to be here. I always love talking about how people can, have a better quality of life with hypnosis.
Excellent, excellent. So, with that, because if the majority of the audience, if they are not familiar with you or your work, why don't you take a second, introduce yourself, and tell us what you got going on?
Okay. Well, I am the founder and director of Hypnobabies Hypnobirthing Childbirth Hypnosis Program. And I created it because of my own two very painful births back in the day. I was just using the relax method, and I was also screaming. So, so during the second birthing, uh, I was screaming. My husband was pressing on my back because I had back labor, and my sister was holding my hands through the whole thing. And after a particularly gnarly contraction, which we call birthing waves, I looked up into her tear stained face and she said, "It should never have to be this hard." And a light bulb went on over my head. And I realized that even if I never had another baby, and I didn't, that I was going to find a way that if people wanted a more holistic experience, more natural birthing, although all births are natural, but what I'm talking about is, unmedicated, uncomplicated, and that I was going to find a way that they didn't have to suffer like this. So it took me a few years, but I did see a TV show about a doctor, an OB, who with when his patients wanted it, taught them hypnosis for childbirth. And two of his patients were on the show, and they showed videos of their births. And I was like, that's it. Because I was already a childbirth educator. Not going to say the name of the natural birthing method, but because I was a childbirth educator, I had thought that I knew everything there was to know about giving birth. And then I gave birth, and so so I was like, let me look into that. So I looked into hypnosis itself, and then hypnotherapy. And then I got trained at a regular hypnobirthing place, organization. And I started teaching their method, which uses more like glove anesthesia. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it's great for toothaches and headaches and things that are like spot pain. And I mean, the gist of it is that there just wasn't enough hypno in the birthing for me, because I was also a doula, which is a labor assistant, and I was going to my students' births. I had gone to my other students, my first natural childbirth students' births, and then as soon as I started this hypno birth thing, I was going to their births, and they were also screaming. So anyway, I then went back and took specialty courses in hypnosis, hypnotherapy, pain management with hypnosis, and found hypnoanesthesia. Now, for those who don't know, hypnoanesthesia is a real thing. It is where people who need to have surgery, whether it's dental or medical surgery of any kind, but they're allergic to medical anesthetics, they work with a hypnotherapist ahead of time. And that way, the inner mind is taught that those feelings of the surgeon's knife cutting and things moving around inside are the normal feelings. They will be there, but they will feel like tingling. They will feel like stretching. There won't be pain associated with it. And once I found out that was a real thing and people actually do use it and get through surgeries and recovery, with hypnoanesthesia, I was like, that's it. So I created Hypnobabies, and that was 22 and a half years ago. And the rest is history. Since then, I have created a lot of other hypnosis tracks for things like eliminating nausea and insomnia and fear of needles and, fear of childbirth and so many other things. And it's very gratifying to see people learning as we go that they can use hypnosis, real hypnosis, to enhance their life, to help them have a better quality of life. And if you would like, I can explain what real hypnosis is.
Please do. It's it's fascinating stuff that because it is natural, but you're not experiencing the pain and the uncomfortness and like what you went through, but you're also not using medication. So please expand further.
Okay. So let's talk
don't
about.
Make me talk like a chicken or a duck.
So that's the first thing we're going to talk about. Most people have an image or a belief system about hypnosis as being what they see in stage hypnosis. And that is where people are plucked from the audience and brought up on stage and hypnotized. And then they quack like a duck and sing like Elvis and do other things that are weird and funny and amuse the audience. So that is entertainment. The skill is in the hypnotist really picking people from the audience who want to play the game and be part of the entertainment. However, real therapeutic hypnosis is completely different. It is a very, very focused state of concentration. Now, that said, we are all in states of hypnosis many times a day, just on our own. Nobody guiding us, but when you're going to sleep and waking up in the morning, you're in a state of hypnosis. When you're daydreaming about going to Hawaii, you're in a state of hypnosis. When you're reading a book, you get into a state of hypnosis. Your eyes are moving across the page or the Kindle or whatever, or the screen, and you get into a hypnotic state. And sometimes people be calling your name and you're like, takes you a minute to come back because you're in a state of hypnosis. And the same is true for gamers. Have you ever tried to interrupt somebody doing a game? They're so focused that their inner mind is someplace completely different. So you could call them and call them and call them for dinner, and until you walk up and touch them on the shoulder, they are not hearing you because they're so focused. They're in a state of hypnosis. So anytime we're watching a screen of any kind, it could be a movie screen, go to the movies, watch TV, our little screens that we scroll through 100 times a day. Anytime we're watching a screen, we're in a state of hypnosis. And of course, driving. Everybody's experienced that thing where you're driving along and you're so concentrating on what's going to happen when you get to wherever you're going that all of a sudden you're either there or you're sitting at a traffic light and you're going, wait a minute, what happened to that last 5 minutes? You were in a state of hypnosis. And so these are more lighter states of hypnosis, such as the alpha state. Now, that means your brain waves slow down a bit from their normal, and you're in a state of hypnosis. However, when we use therapeutic hypnosis, we take you down, or you take you down, different levels of hypnosis to where you can make change. So I'll explain that in a minute. But first, I want to say that all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. That means that nobody can make you do anything. You cannot be forced to even enter hypnosis if you do not want to. You cannot be forced to accept a suggestion. You are 100% in control. Now, a suggestion is a hypnotic directive. So a message inside a hypnosis track you're listening to, or the hypnotherapist that you've gone to, whatever they're telling you, things like that. So those are the messages that you can either accept or not accept. You're never going to go against something that is against your own belief system. And then, of course, you can stay in hypnosis or emerge if you want to. Sometimes it's so comfortable at the end and so relaxed that you can hear the count up 1, 2, 3, open your eyes, take a deep breath, shake your hands. Now you're out of hypnosis, and disregard it because you're in complete control. And it's not religious, and it's not airy-fairy, and it's not new wave. It's just something that we all do. We all do hypnosis, but when you're working towards getting into a deeper state of hypnosis, you're doing therapeutic hypnosis that actually helps you achieve a goal. So we have our conscious mind up here, and we have our subconscious mind down here. And in between, we have what's called the critical faculty. And this is the guardian, the filter, and it decides what gets down into the, subconscious mind. Now, many things will go through the critical faculty anyway, but it really needs to take a nap. So in hypnosis, we relax the body and then the mind consciously, and that makes the critical faculty go take a nap. And then we can just give direct suggestions into the subconscious mind and help it to effect whatever change it is that you want. Now, that subconscious mind is actually a vault of everything that you have ever seen, done, thought, experienced, perceived, and believed, just in a great big vault. So in hypnosis, we're not going to take anything out really, but what we're going to do is we're going to give it new software. We're going to update that software. So if there's a belief system, say, about childbirth being painful and awful and scary and to be feared, then we're going to give it new software that basically on a daily basis gets reinforced, saying, you know what? That childbirth thing is pretty good, and this is how. And there are direct suggestions about creating the hypnoanesthesia in the parts of the body that need it most, and that you're still going to experience the regular sensations of birthing, which is pushing and pulling and tightening and baby movements and all that stuff, but without as much pain associated with it as you have been believing. Some people can have a completely pain-free birth from this, and other people not so much. And that depends on many, many things. There are so many different dynamics in childbirth that can affect the actual outcome of the birth and the use of hypnosis. But by far and away, at least 75% of our students have really comfortable births, and it makes all the difference in the world. So they can avoid having a traumatic birth and having to recover from that. And that is huge. So in that state, we take you all the way down to what's called somnambulism. And that means you're in a theta state where your brain waves are very slowed down, very slowed down. And that is how we access the subconscious mind. And at that level, we are able to create hypnoanesthesia. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Gotcha. So with that, when during pregnancy, if they know from the outset they're going to go with a natural childbirth, when in the pregnancy do they need to ultimately decide if they're going to go just natural, or if they're going to utilize like hypnosis?
Well, it's best to start our program because it's a 6-week program when you're 28 to 30 weeks pregnant. And by that time, trust me, every woman on the planet who is pregnant has researched every possible way to give birth and knows what she wants. And if she wants a more holistic, natural birth, then she's going to seek out ways to make that happen without the screaming. And that would be us. So why would people choose a natural birth? I wanted it because I wanted to keep the drugs out of my baby. So first of all, let's talk about the mother. The birthing person, if given drugs, those drugs can and will change the course of their birth. They get into the muscles, they get in, and the uterus is a big bag of muscles. So it will slow things down. And often, like the epidural, people say, well, the drugs are fine with the epidural, it'll be fine. Well, it is fine for blocking pain, but it also causes things like epidural fever. Now, if you get a fever from having an epidural, then you and your baby are subject to additional testing. After that baby is born, it's going to go through a whole bunch of things, because they're going to assume that because you had a fever, you might be very sick, and then the baby might be very sick. So it could even be a spinal tap that they give the baby just because you had an epidural. In the same way, an epidural can cause the natural hormones of birthing to just cut out. And so if it does that, and we don't have those hormones running through our body anymore, or they are suppressed, then we're going to have what's called Pitocin, which is an artificial oxytocin, an artificial hormone to boost the birthing waves or the contractions and make them stronger. And then there's going to need to be more drugs in the epidural. And then there's going to need to be more Pitocin, because the drugs cause the contractions to be lesser. And so then that's just with the mother. That's just what happens when you have that. If you have a shot, they don't use these much anymore, but there are shots of Demerol and Nubain and Stadol and other things that they will just give you to make you relax and take the edge off. And it will make you so sleepy that you have no idea what your name is. And then when those contractions hit, you have no coping skills also. And all of those drugs, even if they tell you that the epidural drugs don't get into the baby, they do. And all of those drugs get into the baby and can cause respiratory distress and or also an inability to start sucking, meaning breastfeeding starts off really wonky. And sometimes because the baby can't suck, because it's got these drugs in its system and it's very lethargic, of course they're going to give the baby a bottle. And then that really messes up your breastfeeding, because you don't want to give a baby a bottle if you're trying to breastfeed. The nipples are completely different. And the second that a baby puts their lips onto a bottle, the milk shoots out down into their throat. So it's a completely different method of sucking. When you're breastfeeding, the baby has to grab the nipple, suck, and pull it down their throat, basically, at the same time. So it's a completely different action. So if baby can't do that and we're giving it a bottle, then breastfeeding is very disrupted at the beginning. And there are other reasons as well. So that is why people do choose a more holistic, natural birthing.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, you know, to start your child's life off, you know, with all these potential dangers and drugs and stuff, because you're right. I mean, they're still connected, you know, when they're in there and you're getting the medication. So obviously it's going to them. And so, you know, I mean, I've been there for both of my kids' birth, but I was not the one in pain. So I'll leave that one alone. But for a woman's choice, it's, you know, let me ask you this, because you've been doing this for 20 something years. So what have you seen the differences or acceptances or whatever from when, you know, you started and then over the last couple decades?
Well, acceptance from the general public or from the medical staff, or?
I mean, both. What about start with the general public? Like, what are they?
Well, there has been a trend towards natural birthing. And when I say natural, again, all births are natural. But what we're talking about here is an unmedicated and uninterfered with birth. And we can get into that if you would like. And that actually started about 5 years ago, but then was really ramped up when we hit the pandemic, because people became very scared. They became scared of hospitals, of COVID, going into the hospital, having a baby in the hospital. And so there was a huge trend towards having a baby at a birth center with a midwife or a home birth with a midwife. And in those births, you can't get an epidural, you can't get a shot. So you need something that really, really works well for what they call managing pain, and we call eliminating pain. So yeah, and of course the internet. Hypnobirthing itself, that is a general term for using hypnosis for childbirth, and that has become more and more and more popular. And I'll just leave it right there, because there's hypnobirthing and then there's hypnobirthing. Hypnobabies is basically the real deal. And when I say that, it's because over the last 20 years, we have really, really listened. We've listened to the people who've used hypnobabies. We've listened to the people that we've taught to teach hypnobabies in group classes, our instructors, and we've listened to our hypnodoulas. These are people that we train to be labor assistants using hypnobabies so that our hypno couples have somebody with them that really understands all the philosophies, techniques, cues, mindset, hypnosis, all the positions we teach them to help with the descent and positioning of the baby. And we listen to all of them, and we have updated and updated and updated hypnobabies on a level of evidence-based medicine. So as things change there, we edit hypnobabies and add in more evidence-based medicine, because we're a complete childbirth education course. And then also we have changed things and listened to people when they've said this works and that doesn't work, or this could be better this way. And we have edited our tracks, our materials, and really leveled up way up here as far as the kind of hypnosis we have. And there are 21 tracks in Hypnobabies of hypnosis that builds upon one another. Every time you listen to a track, it builds upon the one before it. It's called compounding. So there's hypnobirthing and then there's hypnobirthing. And so we encourage people to really look into the best way that is going to work for them. And I will say that for some people, simple is better. And that would be the other people. And that's fine. Some people just like a track or two to listen to, and that's all they want. And that's great. And we also encourage anybody out there of any method who is trying to help people have a better birthing. You know, you are a gift. All of you are an absolute gift, because I've been there, you know, in the throes of, you know, actual terror, where I was terrorized by knowing that I was going to have another contraction and then another contraction and then another contraction that felt like stabbing pains. So anybody who's going to help people really avoid all of that in any way is a hero in my book.
Right. And then it was same kind of question, but with the medical staff and the medical industry, how have things changed over the last 20 years with them as far as acceptance and understanding or welcoming even?
Well, up and down.
Okay, maybe not the last welcoming part, but yeah, okay.
Up and down, because labor assistants, midwives, nurses, and doctors who see hypnobabies in action, and when the hypno student has learned, practiced, and used hypnobabies as directed, and people don't interfere, and by that I mean the medical staff and or, you know, even family that person has invited to their birth, who is making nothing but negative comments and really drawing that person out of hypnosis. When they've seen this really work, their heads are blown off. and then they will recommend it to everybody they know because their job's easier. Now, that said, I'm going to go back gently to programs that don't have the same materials, let's say, as Hypnobabies. And when they see those people come in and they say they're doing hypnobirthing, and then they end up screaming and getting the drugs and all of that, it doesn't reflect well on anybody who's doing any form of hypnobirthing. So we are on a quest to educate the medical community about the fact that this really does help people, no matter how they do it. They need to actually be encouraged when they get in there, in the hospital, in the birth center, be encouraged to use their techniques, because what we've seen is the medical staff step in between the person and what they want to do, or the techniques they want to use, the tracks they want to listen to, and kind of interfere. That's a good word. And so that's going to happen in a hypnobaby's birth or other forms of hypnobirthing or other forms of natural birth if the birthing person's birth is being interfered with. And of course, we appreciate the fact that there are drugs and procedures and treatments and even C-sections, of course, that are life-saving and health-saving when a person is going to have a baby. And not everybody needs all that stuff. Right. So the second you step into a perfectly normal physiological birth that when before they got here was just rocking along and doing great, and you start interfering with it in different ways, then everything has changed, no matter how you're giving birth.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. Like, you know, a woman's choice to be able to choose exactly how they're going to approach this and get through this. And I can see how a medical professional wants to interject, because they're like, this is why I went to college for a decade, and this is my job, and you know, this is what I'm seeing versus what you're telling me or what you're doing, and getting in the way. And then not only does it throw the hypnosis or the hypnobaby and the birthing out of line and out of whack, but it probably makes things worse. And then they got to step in, and now the situation has elevated to a medical thing versus. And I'm not saying that birth isn't medical, but it goes from a birthing to something medical needs attention.
Yeah, because childbirth is not a medical procedure.
Right.
And in truth, I'm just going to be truthful. Women don't need to go to an obstetrician unless there's something complicated about their pregnancy, because midwives are fully trained and fully skilled at getting that baby out without making you do things you don't want to do, without interjecting, without intervening with an IV that can change the course of your labor, or breaking your water, which can change the course of your labor, or insisting on other treatments and procedures just because we normally do that in the hospital. It's protocol. You know, a normal physiological pregnancy that has no complications does not need an obstetrician. And the reason is because obstetricians are surgeons that have medical training in obstetrics. They're not obstetricians who can sometimes do surgery.
Right.
And so they are more likely to go and push and manage with medical interference. So if people would just understand that midwives are very well trained and can help you not only spend a lot of time with you during your pregnancy, so they'll spend an hour with you at each appointment, whereas you'll get approximately 8 to 10 minutes with your obstetrician. And, you know, the midwife is going to ask you everything about your life. You know, what are you eating? How's your stress level? You know, let's talk about your relationship. Let's talk about your other children. You know, how do they play into what's happening in your body right now? Because they understand the mind-body connection. And that is not an obstetrician thing, although there are wonderful obstetricians who do understand that. I was recently on a show with Dr. Nicole Rankin, who is an OB, and oh my gosh, that woman understands. She completely understands physiological birth and the mind-body connection. So they are out there.
Right.
So,
yeah. Well, I'll give you a couple of minutes here. So just let people know how, if this is interesting, because it's interesting to me, but I mean, I'm past my days of that. But if this is interesting to the audience, just let them know how they can get in touch with you and do some more research on you guys. I got your website up.
well, we do have a very extensive website at hypnobabies.com. And as you can see on the screen, it's HYPNOBABIES. And on there, you'll be able to learn all about Hypnobabies, what it actually is, what hypnosis is. You'll learn about hypnodoulas if you want to. You'll learn about how to find a class. If you want to go to a group Hypnobabies class with an instructor. And you'll also learn about our self-study courses. And we have 3 versions of our self-study course. One is a hard copy course where you get all the materials mailed to you, so you can turn the pages and highlight stuff. And the other 2 are online. One is the basic Hypnobabies course online, and the other one is a bundle for very little money extra, but there are 2 extra courses with it. Our full-on laid-back breastfeeding course and our preparing for your hospital stay and recovery course as well, both of which are really great. And those can be found at hypnobabies-store.com.
Awesome. Yeah, because you're right. I think that, you know, just like with coaches, you have to find the right person and the right organization to get you where you ultimately want to go, right? It's not a phone book anymore where you can just go, there's one option and that's what I'm going with. I'm sure there's a lot out there, but to your point, sometimes there's always going to be like the qualified, the educated, the knows what they're doing aspect of it, and then there's going to be the other side that's like, well, we're just going to do this. And, you know, then all of a sudden you deal with medical staff that's like having bad experience and they won't recommend it to anyone because of that experience.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to rag on other childbirth programs. It's just that at one point in history, everybody, I shouldn't say it that way. There was a plethora of people creating their own hypnobirthing programs so that it's flooded out there and people don't know the real thing, which would be people who have been highly trained about hypnosis itself and hypnotherapy and hypnoanesthesia, or whether or not that program even has hypnoanesthesia or what kind of hypnoanesthesia they have. So it is worth everybody's time, energy, and love to really research, you know, what it is that they really want, you know, and what other people have done and seen great value in. And I just want to say one more thing. I am all for people really, really searching their heart and finding out what they need. For instance, we have many people of faith, Christian moms who do Hypnobabies. And we have a page on our website explaining from the point of view of Christian moms and Christian professionals, how it's okay to incorporate hypnosis into your pregnancy and your birthing, prayer, things like that. And I've seen Christian moms do this really beautifully. And I've also seen them go in to have their babies and the doctor say, turn that Christian music off, because they've incorporated their Christian music with their hypnosis practice, which is fantastic. I mean, it's so smart. And then they get in there and somebody yanks out what has been part of their process,
right,
of having that beautiful birthing. And so seeing things like that really makes me even more motivated to educate hospital staff and do in-services for nurses and OBs and doulas and midwives about, just letting people do their thing.
Yeah.
And how comforting that is to them, which can make all the difference in the world to the outcome of that birthing.
Yeah, no, that's true. And, obviously you and I, we focus on completely different aspects of, just what we're focused on. Obviously you with the Hypnobabies and me focused on, adults that are stuck on autopilot and wanting to live their best life. But there's a lot of parallels between them that I want to kind of get into here in a second. But for us here, guys, just go to go.project9life.com. If you're on autopilot, you're not doing what truly inspires you, and you're not living your best life, just go there. You'll watch a video, give us some information, book a call. It's a half-hour call. We just want to kind of figure out like where you're at, where you're going, and how we can help you get there. It's a complimentary phone call, so the most it's going to cost you is a half hour of your day to get some insight onto things that we can help you with. And then for this episode and all prior episodes, just go to YouTube at Project 9 Life, subscribe to the channel there, and you can see this episode and all of the previous ones because there's a ton of great information being shared on here. So, but a couple things that like you were talking about, like, like you said, hypnosis is, because I use the example too, like you're driving your car and all of a sudden it's like 6 miles later and you're like, how did I get here? There was 2 turns I know that I had to take to get to this spot, and I don't remember them, And I think for me and us here, it's people can sometimes live a work career like that, like on autopilot. They just show up and they do the same thing day after day, and they're not doing their passion. They're not doing what inspires them in their daily work, and they almost feel like either I use autopilot or they're hypnotized into they get to the end of an 8-hour day, and if you ask them like, what'd you do, they're just like, I worked, because they can't actually figure out like, what did I actually do today? Or I know I was there all day, and I talked to this guy, I talked to that person or whatever, but they're not doing what truly inspires them, that you really lights that fire in themselves. And then as well, like you were talking about how moms and families, they really need to take time to figure out like what they need and want out of this experience well ahead of time through discussions and thoughts, and if they're of faith, prayers or whatever, but taking that time to just not rush one way or the other, and being able to figure out what it is they truly need. And we do the same thing here. Like, there's 4 questions that I ask people to really consider before ever getting into a program like this. And the first is, are you currently living your best life? Because if your answer is yes, then I can give you a different perspective But if you're already living your best life, you know, there's not a lot of upside that I can present to you that's going to get you to a higher level because you said you're already there. And then the second is, what does your best life look like? Similar to you, like, what do you want your birthing to look like? It's, what does your best life look like? You can have 1,000 people in a room, and you're going to have 1,000 different answers of what that ideally looks like. But it's something where it changes over time, from your 20s, 30s, 40s, and on. What those answers become and what they elevate into, they're going to change. And so you just, it's to gain clarity on where you're going, but you need to understand like what you're actually aiming at. And then, like you said, you got to have a really positive mindset going into it with, this is it's a miracle of birth. You know, we've prepared everything we have. I'm going to have a great experience, and we're going to welcome a new baby into the world. And you have to have that mindset versus, like you said, you know, oh God, here comes another one, or here comes this, or, you know, just dreading that entire process. And if there's fear underlying that, then you have to understand that. And that's where you step into like your program and get help to understand that, look, this is ultimately what you're going to experience, and focus on the fact that you've got to, you know, if they know a boy or a girl, you know, what are you going to name them? Where's that come from? And have that discussion so that they clear all the smog away, and they're focused on what ultimately that reward is going to be at the end of that journey. And then the last thing is, it is important with childbirth, with people setting goals in their life and truly trying to level up their life, is you have to put yourself first. You have to, you know, focus on some self-care and some ideas that, you know, they're your goals and yours alone. And you have to be able to put yourself ahead of, you know, whatever your friends are saying or your work is saying, and understand that when you're doing these things, whatever your path is, health, wealth, relationships, or whatever, like, it's important to you for a reason. And we discovered that, but you have to put yourself first in that to make sure that you're not listening to all the. There we go. Just
Yeah,
a little,
your screen kind of froze.
Yeah, it's just a little pause in the middle. We're just letting everyone catch their breath again. So,
well, can I say something here?
Yes, please.
So this is for everybody, but this is what we teach our students. Focus on what you want every day for your birthing. So in the case of Hypnobabies, focus every thought on that beautiful birth that you want, the outcome of it, you holding your baby afterwards, you know, how great it's going to be. Think of everything that could go right. And the reason is because your subconscious mind will try to give you what you focus on most. So for everybody out there, if your goal is really to go out and buy a VW Volkswagen Bug, how much time are you going to put into researching and going to different dealerships and stuff that have anything to do with a Cadillac or, you know, any other car? You know, you would focus all of your time and energy and mind power on how to get that bug. Financially, how am I going to get it? What does it look like? What are the deals out there? Where can I get it? All of those things would be your focus. And you want to do that because the more you focus on what you want, the more your subconscious mind goes, oh, that's what they want. Okay, I'm going to help them get it. And then in the case of hypnobabies, hormones will be produced in the body that really help you feel better and help your body stay more positive. With anything else, it's going to produce more thoughts. The more you focus on the positive, it's going to produce more thoughts, which help drive you into actions to get the VW bug. So it's important that people understand that they need to focus on what they want and not what they don't have or not what they don't want. So in our case, if somebody sits around going, I don't want a cesarean, I don't want a cesarean, I don't want a cesarean, their focus is on having a cesarean. The mind doesn't process negatives the same way as it processes positives. So you're literally jumping over the word don't. And your subconscious mind is hearing, I want a cesarean, I want a cesarean, I want a cesarean, because you're focusing so much on the cesarean. So instead, you want to say to yourself over and over again, and really visualize this, visualize yourself having it, being there, doing it, being on the other side of it. You know, I want that wonderful birth, or I want that VW bug. I see myself driving it. So it's super important that people focus on what they want and not what they don't want or don't have.
Yeah, and I would almost add on to that. And when they're thinking about those things, they should think of them in the past tense. Like instead of I want to have a great birth, think of it as I had a great birth, or I got to hold my kid and I felt great, or that way it's not only training your mind like on the positive aspects of it, but you're starting to train your mind as though it's already happened and you've already gotten to that other side of it.
And that is why we have, thank you for bringing that up. That is
You're
why
welcome.
we have visualization in Hypnobabies. So we have our students at least once a week during the entire 2 months before their baby is born, visualizing their birth the way they want it, going through it emotionally in their head, like a birthing rehearsal for your mind. And at the end, they're on the other side. They're holding the baby. They see themselves, they feel themselves, holding that baby, kissing that baby, loving that baby, and taking pictures of that baby so that the mind then gets a blueprint for the birthing. And I suggest people do that as well. And we all know that athletes and speakers do this. They visualize what they want to do, like what that thing is. If it's a basketball player, they are going to practice that shot over and over and over again. They're going to practice that shot in their mind so that when they get there, it's just going to be like already there. Yeah. There's a mind part to it. There's a body part to it. They have synced together. The same thing with speakers. If they're, they picture themselves standing up in front of a group of people and everything going perfectly and being on the other side of it with people shaking their hands and saying, thank you so much for that information. Yeah. And it's really important that people visualize themselves having done what it is that their goal is.
Yeah. So well, and there's actually, I don't know if it's a study or if someone did it, but they took 3 basketball players and they said, okay, we're going to shoot free throws and we're going to shoot 100 of them. And the most, whoever gets the most wins. The only difference is they said to one person, you're not going to practice. You're not going to think about it. They said to the other person, you're going to go to the gym and just shoot as many free throws as you want. And then they said to the third guy, you're not going to pick up a basketball, but you're going to visualize making 100 and just going through it. And in the end, actually, the person that visualized it won by like 1 or 2 over the guy that was actually shooting them. And the guy that didn't do anything, he was way last. But it goes to that power of, it's like a power of suggestion that you're creating for yourself in the positives that you're going to experience and that you're going to get out of it and seeing your way to that end result where, you know, you're not in pain. You've got a beautiful kid that, you know, you got your spouse with you, your family's around, whatever. And they're all celebrating. And that's the feeling that you want to get to, is the celebration of new life, not the dread of, oh God, here comes another contraction.
Right. And I talk often about having a better money mindset. So having a better money mindset, you know, the first thing you want to do is to visualize your success. So you're going to visualize the accomplishments that have already been made. So you visualize a big balance in your bank account. You visualize that your credit cards are all paid off. You visualize a comfortable retirement for yourself. You visualize that beautiful vacation that you really have been wanting to take for a long time, that you're taking it or you have taken it, and then you write all that stuff down, and then you make little affirmations cards and you put them up all over your house and your car, and you keep your mind focused on what it is that you want. And there's more to it, but that's the basics of starting to have a better money mindset. And it all involves visualization, just like the basketball player.
Yeah, it truly is. That 6-pound ball of twine or whatever that's in everyone's head. It's amazing the power that it yields over what happens and what we create for ourselves and for everyone else. And whatever is up there, a lot of times it becomes your reality. And like on your outside world, you can't tell the difference anymore. Whatever your brain has come up as the theme or the story, or the, you know, what you're going to be or you're going to accomplish, like when it puts that in motion and it locks that thought in, a lot of times, more often than not, that's the result that you're gonna get. You know, I mean, I don't play basketball, but you know, any sport or anything like that, since we're using athletes, those guys aren't sitting in the locker room before a game going, God, I hope we don't lose by 50. You know, they're just not. They're full of confidence. They're full of energy, and it's all about what we're going to do to beat whoever we're playing, or, you know, to accomplish something in personally or team wise or season wise or whatever. It's creating that positive thought in your own head, because that's going to become the way that you act on a daily basis. It's going to drive you to do things that you didn't think you could. You know, if it's like, I'm going to be an all-star this year, well, the more you put that in there, it's like, I'm an all-star this year. You're going to put in more reps. You're going to practice more. You're going to do things. You're going to stretch yourself creatively and creatively, and effort-wise to ultimately get there, because your brain's already locked it in as this is what we're doing.
Exactly. And there is a really fun book to read called Words Can Change Your Brain. And it's by a neurologist and a medical researcher. And it is a light way of learning the effect of negativity on your brain versus positivity on your brain. So actual, real effects that can be visualized on an fMRI scanner when people think or say certain things. It is really fascinating. So for those people out there who still do not understand how amazing the brain and the mind are, and how much they govern what we do and the success we have, read that book. Oh, I think you froze. I think Todd's frozen. We'll just wait.
There you go.
You're back.
Yeah. So it reads on the FRMI scanner. I gotcha. That's what
Yes, functional magnetic resonance imaging. It will actually read on there what parts of the brain are being activated when we think or say negative words or thoughts versus positive. And then they have shown the effects on us and the people we're speaking to. The people we're speaking to. So if we say negative things, if people come up to our moms and say, just get the epidural, you'll be screaming. Not only on a conscious level has that made that person scared, but it gets down into the subconscious and the brain.
Yeah.
Affects the brain of that person. So for all you people who feel like you need to tell pregnant women scary birth stories or warnings, please don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Please don't do that.
Yeah,
please.
That's exactly it. So but we're about out of time. So Kerry, thank you so much for joining us. I learned a lot. A little bit late in my life to actually put it into effect, but hey, that happens. And for our viewing audience, I hope you guys got a lot out of this. Enjoy the episode, and we will see you guys again soon. See ya.
Thanks, Todd.